Thanks everybody for being here. It's 2:01 and we'll call this meeting to order. If whoever's taking our minutes will note the roll. I think we've clearly got a quorum, and I think I've got a proxy. Heather Ashley Nguyen has Tucker Ferguson's proxy, and I believe, Amy, you've got Judge Brown's proxy. Anybody else have a proxy that I don't know about?
Natasha Hopper Madison's.
Did you get it? Did she mail it in or get it emailed in? Have staff, have y'all gotten?
I didn't.
Okay, well, we'll confirm that if we got it in writing from her. All right, so we've got plenty of folks here for a quorum. I know we've had a few people sign up for public comments. That form is making its way here.
I actually wanted a velvet rope, so it's a little different than what I was thinking of. Yeah, and a bounce. A burnt orange runaway.
So who was it that sang the Limbo Rock? We'll have that playing in the background music the next time. Okay, so for public comment, we have Larry Foster. If you'll come on up to the podium over here. And then behind Larry, we've got Randy Johnson.
I think she's
Randy Johnston, is that right?
It's Irby Foster, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Irby Foster on Instagram at Texas Highway Advocate. I continue to be concerned about the high number of interstate and state highway streetlights and underpass lights that are out in the CAMPO region. If you see my March 14th letter to Mr. Ashby Johnson. Further, many freeway construction zones are dark because TxDOT has not been providing thorough and uniform work zone street lighting in construction zones, or including all the lighting upgrades in their projects. As I said in April, there are more likely thousands of freeway streetlights out in the 6-county CAMPO region that are working. Several agencies share this responsibility. TxDOT, the TxDOT Managed Toll Lane Authority, but also CAMPO member cities with freeways running through them. As a general rule, every city that has a freeway running through it is responsible for the repair of freeway street lighting. Round Rock, Austin, Georgetown, you're responsible for the repair of those freeway lights. Letting your freeway lighting stay burned out into perpetuity is not safe, nor is it being a good neighbor. It's actually contributing to more unsafe roadways. Why is this important? Between 2020 and 2023, Travis County had a 16% increase in roadway fatalities. Williamson County had a 35% increase in roadway fatalities. According to TxDOT, 50% of those fatalities are at night. Sadly, about 3 people a week are dying on our freeways. So in conclusion, I'm sorry, I missed my spot. Trying to move along. CAMPO has to educate its member cities about their responsibility to ensure streetlight repairs are made and maintained. Good news is CAMPO can help with that cost. Establish a $25 million fund for member communities to dip into to pay for repairs to freeway street lighting, costly lane closures, and repair wire theft, and upgrade freeways to LED. CAMPO members must also begin to insist that TxDOT do 2 things. When they perform a construction project on a freeway in your city, insist they upgrade all the lighting. That's not happening, and I've written Tucker about that several times. Number 2, insist that TxDOT provide uniform and thorough work zone street lighting prior to and throughout all construction projects in your city. And again, that's not happening. That's why many roadways under construction are dark at night. So in conclusion, Madam Chair, I'm asking the CAMPO Board to do more to fund repairs for freeway street lighting throughout the 6-county region. Establish a $25 million fund for member cities to dip into for routine freeway street lighting repairs. Number 2, insist that TxDOT provide thorough work zone street lighting repair on all road projects, and also insist that TxDOT repair all existing lighting in those projects, which I said is not happening. They leave that out and they push that cost back on your city. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I give you back my time. I give you back my time on the other items. I just needed them one time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Foster. All right, next we have Randy Johnston. And I forgot to remind Mr. Foster, but there's a little traffic light looking deal over here, and it'll go to yellow when you've got a minute left and red when your time's up.
Okay. My name is Randy Johnson. I'm representing the Hays County 1826 Neighborhood Coalition, which represents 10 neighborhoods 3 churches and several businesses along 1826 in Hayes County. I live in Rimrock community off of 1826, which is 674 homes, lots in there. And what we did, we have surveyed and got 524 responses out of the people along 1826 in Hayes County. And 68% of them would like to see the 1826 portion of Hayes County started ASAP in lieu of the Travis County portion of 1826 upgrades that are being proposed. And another 18% think, above the 68%, think that Hayes County portion should start before Travis County. And if you look at the traffic coming off of 45 now onto 1826, the freeway 45 comes into 1826, there's about a mile portion of it that's in Travis County, and then it transitions to Hayes County. And that's where the big bottleneck on 1826 is from basically from all the traffic coming down 45 feeding on to 1826 going on out like toward the Salt Lick. And our communities out there are just going to continue to grow. We've got neighborhoods out there and communities that are going to still building. And, you know, our request is, you know, I know you've done your traffic counts and you're looking at things, but think about addressing the bottleneck versus the traffic buildup into the bottleneck. So if you've got a bottleneck, you know, try to address it before you address the other. And the portion of Travis County that's on 1826, I don't think there's very many communities back up that way that are going to be doing any more development. And their traffic should be pretty consistent where our traffic is going to continue to grow. So we're just asking to consideration of doing the Hayes County portion of 1826 expansion, which is now scheduled for 2035, I believe. And the Hayes County and the Travis County is coming up, I think, in the next several years. But just thinking about trying to do that. We've had several meetings with TxDOT, CAMPO, a lot of participation out there. We've looked at the designs. We've given feedback on the designs, and we'd just like for y'all to consider looking at Hayes County expansion in lieu of the Travis County expansion time-wise.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Appreciate it. All right, it concludes our public comments. We have no need today for an executive session, so we'll move on to item number 4, report from the TAC chair, or Chad.
I'll provide that, yep. So we had several information items at our August 26th Technical Advisory Committee meeting. In addition to the fiscal year 2026-2029 call for project and 2050 regional transportation plan update, which are on today's agenda, we discussed the Regional Safety Action Plan, and this is the program through the Federal Safe Streets and Roads for All, or SS4A, grant program to develop individual county plans that nest into a regional plan to allow for future opportunities for safety implementation funds. And we also had a presentation on the Central Texas Transportation Management System, which is an initiative to coordinate traffic signals across the jurisdictions in the region with a focus on those near city limits, so neighboring cities have real-time information if they need to modify their signal timing based on what's happening across city limits. And that's all I have for TAC.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of Chad for the TAC meeting? All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 5. Is Lori here? I didn't see her. Okay. All right, so we have a recognition on item number 5 and want to recognize a couple of folks that are long-serving TAC members who, Gary Hutter from Round Rock, retired recently after, Kristen, how many years did he work for Round Rock? I can't remember how many years.
I think it was like 13.
Yeah, was a huge contributor to Williamson County to Round Rock, but also to the region in what he did in sharing the TAC. And then Lori Moore has also moved on, and so we want to thank her for her contributions to the TAC. Ashby, do you have some other things to share on those two?
I'll just add that both
Lori and Gary were thought leaders in the region and helped us move our mission along quite a bit, not just when they were chairs, but also when they were members of the Technical Advisory Committee. They were able to get folks to consensus on a lot of things that were difficult for us, and our TAC meetings definitely became a lot more productive because of their contributions. So we're going to, we were not able to get a hold of them to get them to come and accept plaques. So if you wouldn't mind accepting for Gary, and then Mayor Houston, if you would accept for Lori, we'd appreciate that.
So again, if you run into any of them, please extend your thanks to them for that and for their service. We'll move on to item number 6, discuss and take appropriate action on the May 13th meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right.
And Madam Chair, I have a correction on that item. So on that item, we had showed Ms. Patello as an abstention on one of the votes, and she actually voted in support. So it's been corrected in the minutes, and the resolution's been corrected as well.
Okay, good. All right, so there's a motion. Is there a second? Okay, second by Commissioner Inglesby. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, no, motion passes unanimously. Item number 7, discuss and take appropriate action on the meeting schedule for next year.
So I guess I'm covering that.
Yeah,
So,
that's yours, Ashley. It's got your
Is it
name
got my
on
name
it.
on it? Oh. So I'll ask you to refer to the agenda that's in your meeting packet, and we discussed this earlier and tried to make adjustments as requested before. And so, Madam Chair, I'll ask for approval of the 2025 meeting schedule with the caveat that even though we've booked meetings for all 12 months, we're probably not going to have a meeting every month of the year. So as you've gotten used to not having a meeting in March and not having one in July, we're not planning on having those. But in case we need them, we've got them on the books, and we'll cancel them as needed.
So just as I'll quickly run through them. January 13th, February 10th, March 10th, April 14th, May 12th, June 9th, my mom's birthday, July 14th, August 11th, September 8th, October 13th, November 10th, and December 15th. So is there a motion on accepting the schedule for the meetings next year?
As long as the national championship game isn't January 13th for the Longhorns, I'm okay with it.
You're feeling expectant.
Oh, yeah.
The hype train is in motion.
2 games, Rudy. 2 games.
Okay, so is that a second?
Long way to go. Second.
Okay. Motion and a second on accepting the schedule for next year. All in favor? Anybody opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously.
I was going to make a request for coffee, if we could reinstitute that policy for the coffee.
Travis wants coffee back.
It's very nice. I've made it a few times. Now it's on the record.
1 cup.
If not, I'll bring you a cup for the next meeting, Travis.
All right, fair enough.
All right, item number 8, discuss and take appropriate action on authorizing the CAMPO Executive Director to execute an interlocal with TTI.
Madam Chair, I'm going to take that one. So we, CAMPO staff, have been having some conversations with City of Austin staff, and in particular Jim Dale, for the last 4 years or so. The conversations really have revolved around special events, not just in the City of Austin, but also across our 6-county region. What we've seen over the past probably 5 years or so is some festivals, special events that were in the City of Austin, in some cases have moved out, in some cases to Lockhart, to Bastrop, to other places. We've also seen events that existed in other areas like Georgetown, Round Rock. Those events have gotten larger. And we're seeing that a lot of those special events now are starting to happen at the same times as, Austin City Limits or Texas Tribune or other things like that. What we found is there's not a whole lot of coordination between the different localities when these events are happening, both in terms of traffic management, but also in terms of emergency response. And so what we're proposing to do in this agreement is have Texas Transportation Institute, so it would be Dr. Tim Lomax, who's done a lot of this type of analysis, both for A&M for their football games, for the traffic, but also for a lot of different localities across the state and the country, for that matter. We would have him come in, one, give us a catalog of all of the special events that are happening in the region, because today we don't know all of them. Then, as requested, we would do traffic pattern analysis for them and set up some protocols for communication between the different agencies. So I want to make sure that for the City of Austin board members, that y'all understand that we're not looking to go back and re-examine and reinvent the wheel for Austin. We're taking that as it is. The city's done a bunch of work. We're trying to get everybody else up to the same level. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll stop and ask for approval and ask for questions.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? Mayor.
There we go. Ashby, does that look into or coordinate with rideshare groups too? One of the things that we ran into with our big music festival, it happened to be the same weekend as the motocross down at F1, and I mean, and it was chaos just getting the ride, and both of them were relying on rideshare, and no one had told any of the rideshare people.
Yes, so it would tie into the rideshare work that we're doing through our travel demand management program, but it would also tie into the construction partnership program that we're doing with Travis County, City of Austin, TxDOT, Metro RMA for I-35, and also tie into the Central Texas traffic management system work that we're doing as well for signal timing.
Ashby, on task number 4 in that work plan, I just want to make sure, because you mentioned it, that we beef up and include connecting with the emergency management folks in the area. And I mean, it's kind of mentioned in there, but I think beefing that up to make sure that we understand we want coordination with that as well.
Okay.
Is any other comments or questions on? All right, is there a motion to approve?
I have a question.
Okay, there's a motion by Mayor Schrader and a second by Mayor Delisle. Commissioner.
Thank you. Could you just clarify, Ashby, when you mentioned the construction partnership, is that some entity that's helping coordinate all these roads going, you know, from the airport to I-35 to 290, all this stuff happening at the same time?
So the construction partnership program is City of Austin, TxDOT Austin District, Travis County, CTRMA, Metro. Am I leaving somebody out? Am I leaving somebody out? Oh, and us. And so we're coordinating the construction work and also looking at trip sharing in some cases, but also looking at traffic information systems going out.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And to be clear, Ashby, that includes having an app which will be the central repository for people to get the information, because just like you said, one of our biggest problems is there's so much going on right now that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. So having a central place for that access is huge. Good work.
Any other questions? All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously.
Madam Chair,
Oh, sorry.
may
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't see your hand.
Yes, may I mark the vote
That's right.
for
Thank
Judge
you.
Brown as yes, and the one for myself is abstaining?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please note that in the minutes, that Judge Brown votes yes and Ms. Patillo is abstaining. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, item number 9, regional freight plan update or action.
Good afternoon. My name is Nirav Ved. I'm the Data and Operations Manager for CAMPO. At the May meeting, I presented this item for information, and it's been a few months, so we'll just do a quick recap of what the regional freight plan was and what it included, and then we'll also go over some of the recommendations that came out of the freight plan. There were a total of about 80 recommendations. I will not go over each one of them, but just to let you know that those recommendations were broken up into short-term, medium-term, and long-term recommendations into 4 different categories of infrastructure, technology, safety, and land use and economic development. And then finally, I'll end with some project gap analysis, just showing from the analysis that we did what areas of our region will be project or priority corridors for new freight-related projects. So just to give a brief recap of what's in the regional freight plan, it's not just this, but these are some of the highlights. First, we did just sort of an inventory of assets for freight in our region. We have about 856 total miles of highway lane miles in the region, just did on the Texas Highway Freight Network. There's a lot fewer of that on the national highway freight network, but what this freight network is just a designation by the state that these are the roads where freight are most likely to travel, and they're the ones where need the most attention in terms of construction projects and dollars to accommodate that freight travel. For rail, there's about 400 miles of rail lines in this region. 240 of those are owned by Union Pacific. We have pipelines in the region, and we also have multiple airports, but only one of them, ABIA or AUS, is required because of their runway lengths to actually report on the types of freight that they have coming into and out of the airport.
Nirav, what's the length requirement on a runway?
You know,
sorry. You're like, why did you
whatever
ask
it is, Austin meets it.
Yeah, no, I was just curious because I know there's a Georgetown airport, and I was curious about what runway length was.
So all I know about the Austin Bergstrom Airport is that we inherited from the military, so obviously they have very large airports, so I don't know how much further than the minimum federal requirement it is that they meet that. Another thing that we saw, and shouldn't be a surprise, is that we have a lot of truck parking challenges in the region. In this region, there is no public area for truckers to park, and they need to park for a number of reasons. One is to meet federal rest requirements, which, as Ashby has mentioned, is that when it's time for them to rest, they have to get off the road. They cannot keep on driving, so having parking for them is essential. They park because they need to either stage or load and unload. So, addressing that is something that was identified as a challenge. There's equity challenges related to freight in our region. We have seen more freight traffic, experience more crashes related to freight compared to non-census tracts, so definitely something to address. And another thing that we did was look at the impact of e-commerce in our region. And what we saw is that warehouse and fulfillment center space increases as the population increases. And one of the studies that we cited says that in some cases, warehouse and fulfillment center acreage, square footage can take up to 3 times as much as a traditional retail space. So as our region grows, there's going to be more and more space that's probably going to need to be dedicated to these warehouse fulfillment centers. And just, that's when we look at the land use portion of the plan, is something that you need to consider in your land use plans. So just to go over some of the recommendations, we'll just do them by categories. I won't go over all of these, but I mentioned earlier about the need to look at truck parking. So one of the recommendations was to do a regional study for truck parking. The state had done one about 3 or 4 years ago, but what this regional one would do would be to look at identifying specific locations that would be ideal for truck parking and what we can do to get that off the ground. For technology, we have several ITS or Intelligence Transportation System related recommendations. A lot of this work we're already starting with our update of our regional ITS architecture. That is a document that we have to do about every 3 or 4 years, required by the federal government. It's an inventory of ITS assets in the region, and the reason you do that is so that when you have ITS projects, you have to have an updated plan to be eligible for federal funding for those particular projects. So a lot of these are going to be addressed in that ITS architecture. For safety, of course, safety is one of our #1 priorities. Really, we're just looking at trying to increase safety for at-grade rail crossings. In our region, I think there's about 50 or so, and 16 of them are in Williamson County, and 11 of them are in Bastrop County. So Those two counties have the most at-grade rail crossings in our region, so definitely looking at ways to examine how to use technology to increase the safety for those crossings is important for us. And then finally, just looking at land use and economic development, I think one of the major recommendations out of this study is to look at support of developing a intermodal freight hub for the region. Right now, when things come in by train, they have to either be dropped off in San Antonio or trucked out to, taken by train out to DFW, offloaded onto a truck, and then trucked over here, which in terms of delivery times and efficiency, really creates a delay in that. So having an intermodal freight hub in this region would help increase things like economic activity, boost jobs, just boost productivity, and the ability to get things on time for the supply chain. As I mentioned earlier, we did a project gap analysis. So what you see here is a combination of segments of the road, segments of our network that are either funded, unfunded, or that there's no identified projects or projects have been identified in the TxDOT's long-range freight plan. And as you can see, most of the segments in our region either have projects identified or they have projects funded. But out in the east of our region, there are several segments, several corridors that either have partially funded or unfunded projects. So what we then decided was that in the east, these are priority corridors for the next round of freight-related projects, mostly in Bastrop County and Caldwell County. So we took this to TAC at its May meeting, and at that meeting, TAC recommended, as along with staff, that the Transportation Policy Board approve the regional freight plan. And thank you for your time. Look forward to any questions and discussion.
Is there a motion? Is a question or a motion? Okay.
So back in '22, when we adopted the contract for this, I asked some questions about how we were addressing carbon emissions, and I was told there was going to be a separate process of an air quality plan or mobile emissions. Can you speak to how we are including these air quality issues in our planning process? I understand it was too late in the scope of that to include that, but there are a lot of implications of the volume of this freight for our air quality, and we are very much close to non-attainment. So I want to make sure that the board is going to have the information we need to assess things, and that we're planning what the future of our freight plan needs to be, taking into consideration those consequences.
Okay. I can provide an update on the mobile emission reduction plan if you'd like in relation to that. So we kicked that off, 2 months ago? And we're getting everything set up right now, but we'll be bringing that information back to the board, and we're going to be building off of anything that came out of the freight plan. So the soft schedule for that right now is that we will be, that plan should be wrapped up by the end of next year, calendar year. So we'll be taking freight considerations as part of that as we look at building, the results out of that. So hopefully that answers that.
And Councilmember, just so you know why it took so long, we were waiting on an approval from Federal Highway Administration for over a year, which has not been unusual lately.
Unfortunately.
So can you provide any sense of what might be in that plan to address the air quality implications of this plan and any of those investments?
Yeah, we'll be doing a baseline inventory and running projections based on the freight data that came out of this plan. So the data that came out of this study will be wrapped up into the emissions reduction plan. It won't be just freight, obviously, but it will certainly be a major component of it.
So be at that point that if some of these recommendations or the needs are there, that we would be recommending additional steps that we would be taking to address the air quality issues. Okay.
Yeah, the mobile emission reduction plan is to set up a game plan for us to invest in to avoid going into non-attainment if possible, but definitely addressing emissions specifically.
Okay. I hope that timing is not too late. I know we didn't control it.
I move approval for action item number 9.
All right. Commissioner Trevelyan, is there a second? Councilmember Mateus seconds that motion. Is there any more discussion?
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I think what I hear Councilwoman Alter saying is that it seems a little, or to me it seems a little backwards. It's like we've got the freight plan and then we have a plan to figure out how to deal with the problems we're causing. And so if you look at, like, it seems like it should be part of our freight plan. And so I just wanted to say that out loud.
Councilmember?
To the commissioner's point, from what I'm hearing, it is a part of the freight plan, but it's also an aspect that's addressing other systemic issues in the region as well. Is that correct? Okay. And I know that we talked about it at our joint meeting with AMPO back in June about looking at this not just for, we're talking about non-attainment, not just for this region, but the two regions that are just barreling toward each other and about to become a super region, for a better lack of term. Have we also taken into consideration, and narrative, I loved how you presented this back, I guess it was June, talking about how we don't even look at our Amazon trucks as freight, but they truly are freight and should be designed as such, but the federal government hasn't even caught up with that definition yet.
Yeah, so thank you, council member. So we did look at that. We looked at the impact that individual warehouses can have. We did some interesting analysis that I don't think has actually been done before in the country, and using mobility, large-scale mobility data to identify traffic coming into and out of warehouses. And we had to do that because, like you mentioned, an Amazon van does not count as one of the 13 classified trucks out there. So when you hear anything about traffic counts or whatnot, Amazon trucks are not counted as freight. They're just counted as a car that any one of us would drive. And so to figure out a way to count the number of just pure Amazon or FedEx or UPS vehicles coming into and out of those facilities, and how much traffic they're putting on yours and our roads, required some innovation. We didn't quite get all the way there, but we're hoping that we answered a few questions in terms of when the trucks are coming into and out of the facilities, where the facilities are coming, because in some cases, some of these facilities didn't even appear on Google Maps. We just happened, they're happening so fast, they're faster than Google, essentially. So yeah, I'm not saying that we tackled the problem, but we started.
Well, I think we talked about it in June more in depth, but we're ahead of the federal government on this, so congratulations to the team. There's a motion and a second for approval. Any other comments, questions? All right, seeing none. All in favor of approving the regional freight plan? Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Item number 10. I want to say thank you to the policy board members who took the time to send in an evaluation for our executive director, Mr. Johnson. I guess this is my third or fourth evaluation that I've helped administer, and thank you. It's the highest score Ashby's ever gotten. So, and it's really close to perfect. So, congratulations, Ashby. I think I'll just share a couple of the comments of people that took the time to actually put notes on there. Talked about Ashby continues to represent our region at the state and national level and is recognized for his expertise in metropolitan planning. CAMPO's audit results are stellar year after year, does a superb job of informing members, training staff, and just several other really positive comments. And some of the other folks that were a part of the evaluation, if you want to share anything. I kind of read some of y'all's comments already, so.
Close enough to perfect for me, but that's talking about an hour or something.
Yeah, so, and I've had the privilege of working with Ashby since he's gotten here, and it's just a year-over-year improvement, and I'm continue to be impressed, so.
I was about to say, I think the biggest thing, Bueller? No, I think the biggest thing is that, Ashby, you've been responsive through the years. There have been concerns or issues regarding agenda or meetings or just items in general. You've worked seamlessly to actually go ahead and address those and actually understand where we're coming from on these things. We all have various different opinions and viewpoints coming from our jurisdictions, but you're doing a good job melding those together and getting a product that's out there for that. I do appreciate the forward thinking. I think that's really key. I really do appreciate what you've said regarding the environment, environmental studies, and trying to make sure we're doing some difference in our region. You're setting a benchmark for a lot of other people to reach across the state, so good work, Dad.
Yeah, thank you.
And with that, the executive committee is recommending a 5% merit increase for Ashby for this year. So just we'll need board approval of acceptance of the evaluation and then approval of that. I don't want to move to a motion unless anybody else have any comments from the executive committee meeting. Okay, so I'll take that's the cost of living. And there is, so just as a reminder for new board members, the CAMPO Williamson County is the fiscal agent for CAMPO. So CAMPO staff go by our vacation schedules and when the county gives cost of living increases and that sort of thing. So the county is doing a 3% cost of living increase as well for all staff, and that will include CAMPO staff as well. And then generally what we do, and every county does it different, but we put out a pot of money that can be used for merit increases, and that can be up to 5%. So that's what the executive committee is recommending for Ashby this year. All right, I'll make a motion that we accept his evaluation and approve the merit increase.
Second.
Second from Mayor Penniman-Moran. Any other comments?
I have a question. So is that a CAMPO policy that CAMPO staff receive the same increase that Williamson County staff?
On a cost of living,
yeah,
we've done that, not necessarily on merit, but
right.
We have followed that, but that's actually up to Ashby as to how he administers that.
Your staff might rather follow what Travis County's doing. I'm just saying. It's higher.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. all in favor of the motion? All right, anybody opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously.
Madam Chair, can I say?
Yes, feel free. I'm sorry, Ashby, I skipped over you.
I just wanted to, thank all of you for your leadership in the region on transportation issues, but also I wanted to tell y'all, in my 34 years of doing this, this is the freest and most supported I have ever felt in a job. And I hope that it shows. So, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. I've got a great staff. They make me look good, and I appreciate them, and I appreciate the support that y'all have given me. Thank you.
So what did Travis County? I'd really like to hear from some of the counties and cities.
So,
actually,
somewhat related to this topic, Commissioner Beckett wants to know what Travis County did for cost of living.
City of Austin was 4%.
We're 5%. He's 6%.
COLA?
Ooh.
No, 4% COLA, 2% adjustment from the step program.
We were 4%.
We're 5% across the board.
Yeah.
We actually did a mid-year one a couple years ago.
Yeah, we did.
So I think it probably averages out pretty close.
So just for reference.
Well, maybe he can just add them all together.
Oh, no.
I mean, that's what it sounds like we want. I don't know. You know.
Well, Commissioner Howard certainly is advocating that.
We have a poor little city that did 1% and is being crucified.
For doing 1% or not doing more?
For doing 1%.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
In the ensuing tax increase, and we're being, by our own state representative, by the way.
Wow.
Just putting that out there.
Okay, item number 11. upcoming call for projects and funding opportunity. I think that's you, Ryan.
Yes, thank you. So we wanted to announce the upcoming call for projects. We're actually going to do 2 back-to-back, which I'll talk about both of them, but more specifically today, I want to talk about the project call for the fiscal years 2026 through 2029. We're going to start with a project call. We're going to release it this week, actually. It says the 9th up there, but I've got an updated schedule on the next slide, but we're going to release it on the 12th. And this project call is specifically for the Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Funding Program, as well as the Carbon Reduction Program. And just a reminder for those of you who aren't familiar with these programs, TASA is a carve-out of the Surface Transportation Block Grant funding. And this is basically for projects that don't add capacity. Most people think of pedestrian and bicycle facilities, recreational trails, safe routes to school, as well as there's some community improvements as well as environmental mitigation and habitat connectivity that are eligible under this program. And then we've got the brand new Carbon Reduction Program, which is very, very similar to TASA. As a matter of fact, TASA activities are eligible under carbon reduction. But these are any projects that directly reduce transportation emissions in this region. That includes TDM programs, ITS projects, transit, as well as non-vehicle infrastructure. And the reason these are coupled together, I think the best way to think about these are non-added capacity projects. If they don't add capacity to a roadway, they're probably eligible under these 2 programs. And so let's talk about how much funding we have available. So we essentially have just over $31.6 million of carbon reduction funding available, as well as $37 million in transportation alternative set aside. And so this project call will basically take place over a year. We'll come back in May in June with a recommendation, and then we can start programming these projects in fiscal year 26, which starts in calendar year of October 2025, and we'll program out those projects from 26, 27, 28, as well as 29. So all told, we're looking close to $70 million worth of funding for this project call. So this is the schedule. We are going to announce and post everything on the website on September 12th, which is this Thursday. We'll have a couple of webinars that will be pretty in-depth. They're going to go through project readiness and go through the criteria. I do want to point out that this process will use the criteria that was adopted by the policy board back in 2017. We have 7 categories of projects that have specific criteria that were adopted by the policy board. And we will use that criteria to score the projects, rank them, and based on their ranking, we will be recommending them for funding and programming. And then a big part of this project call is also the project readiness, which is what a majority of the webinar will spend evaluating in the projects to make sure that should y'all select them for funding, that they can move forward. These projects are managed by TxDOT at the Austin District and go through TxDOT's local government project procedures process, which is built off of the federal process, and it's a pretty complex process, and so we will evaluate all these projects to make sure all the steps have been taken so that if we do federalize the project, that they can move forward as they are scheduled. And we're going to be doing, along with the webinars, we'll have open office hours, and then the applications will be due on December 20th, 24, right before Christmas. And then we'll be spending basically January through April, all the spring, evaluating the projects, and then we'll be bringing them back in May and June for the policy board to approve. And then finally, I do want to talk about the SDBG funding opportunity. We had talked about bundling some of that funding into this project call, but we're actually going to do that as a separate project call, and we're going to start that as soon as we conclude this TASA and CRP funding call. And the reason I'm going to bring it up now is that if any of your staff or your representative governments are interested in SDBG funding as well, I would encourage you to attend all of the TASA webinars as well, because the process will remain the same. And currently we have $173 million that we can schedule starting in 2028 through 2031. And when $173 million is the floor, that's what we're scheduled to have. We always over-program a little bit. We have several large projects that should they shift for funding or anything like that, we want to make sure that we have enough projects to fill in that gap. So we'll probably have a project call around or north of $200 million. But that process will start this time next year, actually. So I wanted to go ahead and get everyone on board for that and aware of that project call as well. So yeah, that's the conclusion of my presentation. I'll take any questions.
So Ryan, a question on the TASA.
Yeah.
I'm intimately familiar with our 2017 score criteria that we worked on, but I'm looking at habitat connectivity, for example. I mean, how is that, because I'm going through that framework in my head, and I'm not sure how a project like that is going to get scored.
So we meet and basically make the case and provide the data for those projects and how it benefit transportation.
Because I know in Bastrop County, you know, Commissioner Beckett, y'all had to actually, as part of your Houston Toad, so y'all had to basically create tunnels for them to.
No.
No.
I think that was just a project.
But there are projects like that. We're dealing with salamanders and blind spiders and all kinds of stuff that, you know, so I just was curious as to how that would fit in, but.
And this, I know San Antonio just had a wildlife crossing over, I want to say it was I-10 maybe for deer. So, yeah, it's eligible, absolutely.
Well, and Florida has actually done, they've got an endangered tiger, and they've actually done tunnels for the tigers to cross under a major roadway.
Oh, that's really cool.
So, and they've actually moved north through the state. Kind of cool. So, sorry, that was a little divergent question there, but anybody else have any other questions?
I do,
Ryan?
Chair. Just a quick question, because I wasn't on this board in 2017. Can that criteria be reshared, or can you point me to where that exists on a website, maybe?
Yeah, the criteria, we have the 2017 packet is still posted on the website on the funding opportunities page, but on the 12th, on Thursday, we're going to be sending everything out. There's a new packet with the same criteria, but updated readiness information. So all of that will be available, absolutely.
Okay, and if there's balanced weights to any of the scoring, just so, since this is a process I haven't been involved in before, I'm just curious.
Okay.
And then I do have a question if there's any new things that will be added with any of the new federal funding, like our emission reduction plans that some folks are doing. Are there any extra criteria that might be added in at some point along the way, or can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of it's actually in the scope of the emission reduction plan, is that we were going to develop a criteria specifically for the CRP program to be used. The problem with that, as Ashby mentioned, we're a year and a half behind on the emission reduction plan development. And so we were supposed to be wrapping that up around now, and we were going to use that criteria as part of this project call. But one thing I do want to point out about TASA and CRP funding is that they lapse after 4 years. And so we need to get a program now, or we risk losing it, which is why we're not waiting to the end of the program or for the plan to finish before we allocate the rest of the carbon reduction funding program. But short answer is yes, it will develop criteria, and we'll use that in the future after this project call. So.
Okay, that's fantastic, because I know there's a few communities that I represent that have been specifically asking for things like shared use paths and different urban trail connections. Some of those are actually copying things that TxDOT or the RMA have built into their projects, and then they say, but can you make it go 1 mile further? And so I'm curious about how we can help with some of that grid connectivity for those alternative options.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
Any other questions of Ryan? Yes.
I'm on the website and I can't find it. What would I search for?
Go to the funding opportunities. I would Google CAMPO funding opportunities, and it should pop up.
And will it just say TASA?
No, it'll just have a project criteria packet, I think.
Okay, thank you.
It's been a while since I've been on there, but.
Would you mind? We'll send it out to everybody.
Yeah.
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so seeing no further questions on that particular item, we'll move on to item number 12, 2050 Transportation Plan Update.
Good afternoon, William Liska, Regional Planning Manager for CAMPO. This information item serves as an update on CAMPO's work developing the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, also known as the RTP. At the May board meeting, CAMPO introduced the 2050 RTP, including the purpose of the plan and the expected timeline for key milestones. After the May meeting, CAMPO hosted a project call for member agencies to submit projects to CAMPO for consideration for inclusion in the 2050 RTP. The application period was open from June 17th to August 16th, and in total, 756 projects were submitted. I also want to note that prior to this process, CAMPO worked with its member agencies to review their projects listed in the currently adopted 2045 RTP to determine which of those projects should be carried over from the 2045 RTP to be considered for the 2050 RTP. Carried over projects then did not need to be submitted through the project call process. Here's a summary of the projects submitted to CAMPO through the project call, as well as those requested to be carried over. 282 projects were requested for carryover, and then added to the 756 projects submitted through the project call. This comes to a total of about 1,000 projects. Now, I should also note here that some CAMPO members chose to resubmit their listed 2045 RTP projects through the project call process rather than carrying them over. So many of the 756 projects are not necessarily new to the 2050 RTP.
William, does that make a discernible difference, or are those numbers duplicative as indicated in there?
This is not a duplicative number. This is in total.
My apologies, I didn't convey it well enough. You mentioned that some members decided to resubmit the prior one that was already carried in the previous projects. Are those total numbers reflective of that double dipping, for a better lack of term, or did you notice that it was already there previously, so you just marked it down and you didn't have to worry about the previous one?
So what I would say is that we had about 750 projects in the 2045 RTP. So roughly, 300 of those are carrying over to the 2050 plan, and then we received most of the rest of those as submissions to the 2050 project call process. So I would say in total we probably received roughly 300 to 400 new projects, ones that weren't in the 2045
So
plan.
756 is the total number? Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. Next, I'd like to cover some of the steps that CAMPO staff will be taking to review the received projects. The first couple have been completed. CAMPO staff have reviewed all the applications for completeness, regional significance of the projects, and the provision of concurrence for projects that span jurisdictions. We will be reaching out to staff at the submitting agencies over the coming weeks to provide any additional information needed from this screening. Projects that pass the screening will be scored by CAMPO staff and then entered into consideration for the draft 2050 RTP constrained project list. Additionally, projects carried over from the 2045 RTP, those already listed in the current TIP and 100% locally funded projects will enter this list. The development of the draft fiscally constrained project list, including the calculation of the fiscal limit, will be discussed as part of a future board information item. Next, I'll cover a quick overview of important upcoming steps in our process. At September TAC, we will be discussing the fiscal constraint methodology and providing an update on the project list development. In a few weeks, we will also be starting the first round of public outreach for the RTP, which Joyce will discuss in more detail in a moment. At October TAC, we will review the draft revenue estimates for the fiscal constraint component. We will then review those revenue estimates with the board, as well as provide an update on the project list development at the November board meeting. By the end of December, we expect to have a draft 2050 RTP document completed. Then in 2025, we'll begin the steps required to finalize the document. In January and February, we will take the draft plan to TAC and board for information. This will be followed by TAC and board information on the final plan in March and April, prior to a recommendation by the TAC and action by the board in May. I'm now going to turn things over to Joyce to talk in more detail about our outreach efforts for the 2050 RTP.
William, before you leave that topic, just I know we had some good lessons learned from our last revenue estimate exercise. I just want to make sure we incorporate that because there were some places where we struggled, and I just want to make sure we understand where we had some missteps last time and make sure we incorporate that going forward.
Yes, thank you. And right now, our consultant is reaching out to meet with staff at all of the agencies that sit on this board, and I believe those lessons are being taken into account in those first meetings.
And I think most importantly is making sure the right people were in those meetings. That at a county level, you just don't want to meet with the auditor. You want to have the county engineer and different folks there. And so, thanks.
right, well, that slide doesn't seem to be in here. We've had a lot of tech issues the past week, needless to say. So I just wanted to remind the board, I know there's some new members since we last did this in 2020. The adoption for the RTP has a little bit different public outreach requirements than the TIP and some of our other plans and studies. So it is, and we can send this out, it is a two-step process. We do 2 rounds of public outreach for the RTP, for the long-range plan, and it's all documented in the public participation plan that this board approved yet again in 2019. So as Will mentioned, we will be having the first round of public outreach starting later this month. It'll be open for about 60 days, and this will be the opportunity for the public to learn about the CAMPO plan, what an RTP is, what it does, become familiar with the region and the purpose of the RTP. And then later in 2025, prior to the board adopting the plan and having the public hearing, we'll be doing a second round of public outreach. Again, that'll last for about 60 days, about 2 months' time. And that'll be when the public will be able to have an opportunity to review all the projects that are submitted for the plan and comment to the board on those projects. So we will be using the same methods that we used in 2020. Of course, some of you may remember we had to adjust things in the spring of 2020, and we allowed for more remote options that didn't necessarily rely on technology. We've had mail-in commenting, voicemail commenting. We continue to provide information and surveys by mail with postage-paid envelopes if that's easier for people. Of course, we'll also have an online open house, open the duration of those comment periods. So that's just kind of an overview of the requirements that are listed in the public participation plan. I know we'll be going a little bit more in depth throughout the plan adoption period. So Will and I are happy to take any questions, though, if you have those at this time.
Any questions of Joyce or Will? All right, thank you for the update. Appreciate it. Let's see, that takes us to item number 13, the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the 24 MPOs in Texas have been meeting for the past 3 or 4 months to renegotiate the planning, the Federal Highway, Federal Transit Planning Fund distribution formula. So the planning fund funding money comes through TxDOT to the metropolitan planning organizations, and that money is in our case, is mainly used to pay for salaries, overhead, rent, those kinds of things. So if you've been following the audit for the past few years, you know right now we get about $3 million a year between the Federal Highway and the Federal Transit funding, and our expenses are about $3 million every year. So what we've been doing as a association of state metropolitan planning organizations, some of us have been voluntarily giving up a small portion of our funding to get the smaller MPOs to a minimum floor so that they are actually able to do the work that they need to get done. We see that as helping all of us because we feel like if the weakest MPO in the state is strong, then we're all strong. So we've been renegotiating. We had a meeting last Friday in Dallas as part of the TxDOT planning conference where we tried to reach consensus on a new formula. The formula that we're under now has not been touched since 2006, and it was supposed to be done every 5 years. So if you look at the item that moves the needle the most in terms of the funding is population. So all of that population increase that we'd had since 2006 was not being captured. I think we actually got pretty close to a consensus point last Friday. At least TxDOT feels that way. So the next steps on that are TxDOT will take the recommendation forward to the Texas Transportation Commission. They said at the September meeting, but I think it might be more like October. Once that is approved, by the way, Federal Highway Administration was in all of the meetings to make sure that everything was being done the right way. Once it goes to the commission, we're probably looking at fiscal year 2026 before we actually see the effects of the new formula. Right now, depending, and I want to see what the final formula looks like, but right now on the formula that we saw being recommended last Friday, we would receive about another $1 million a year. And so that will be helpful. We can, I feel like we might be able to get to the point where we can start to do a few more planning studies for y'all and not have to worry about taking that out of category 7.
That's great. Any other?
Oh, sorry. So I've made reference to the TxDOT Planning Conference that was last week in Dallas. Normally we don't see more than a few hundred, like 100 or 200 people saw at the conference. This one was over 600. So it was by far the biggest planning conference that we've seen for TxDOT. It was a very good conference. CAMPO staff was on the agenda in a couple of spots. So Eric Busker and I with BGE gave a joint presentation on the CAMPO Quarters program, well received both by the crowd, and TxDOT senior administration was there and stayed and watched the whole thing and then came up to say how excited they were about it afterwards. So that was nice. And then Nirav and Brent Christian, also with our general engineering consultant team, gave a presentation on our Central Texas traffic management system work. Also, TxDOT administration was in the room for that one and was pretty happy about what they saw and heard there as well. So, but good conference overall, and we got to see a bunch of folks we hadn't seen in years. Then I guess it was, I forget which week it was, but it was this month. I guess it had to be in the last 2 weeks, didn't it? So I attended the CTRMA board meeting along with representatives from the city of Manor, and I was there to speak in support of a budget item and for CTRMA to do a feasibility study on 290 East from where the toll lanes stop today going to Elgin. And for those of you that are interested in this project, just so you know, I want to go all the way to 95 on the eastern side, not stop. It makes no logical sense to me to stop at the other point. Otherwise, we end up with what we got now. Went to speak on behalf of that, and that item was approved by the RMA board. So next steps, from what I've been told by CTRMA staff, they have been in the process already of doing outreach to elected officials in Manor and Elgin, and they just kind of want to see kind of how things are going, and then they will go out and do a round of outreach in the beginning, but the work, the feasibility work in earnest would start early part of next year, probably February timeframe. And the significance of having the RMA do the analysis as opposed to having the TxDOT Austin District do it is if the RMA does it, they can look at toll as well as non-toll options. If the district does it, they can't look at toll options. So that's why we were asking the RMA to do that work. It's huge, and there was buy-off from the governor's office. Excellent. So that was the only thing I had. That was the last thing.
Great, thank you for that update, Ashby. Item number 14, just as a reminder, the TAC will meet on September 23rd, and we will meet as a policy board on October 7th. So if there are no other items, I don't see any. We stand adjourned. Wait a minute. Is that, oh, I see a hand.
Apologies, Chair. I had a quick request. One of our colleagues wasn't able to make it today because it is always in person and there's no remote option. And so I just hope that in the future maybe we can revisit the conversation. You know, if someone is just physically unable to be here, that they can still participate because she's wanted to, just wasn't able to make it work.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we will adjourn at 3:05.